Good afternoon and welcome again, everybody. I'm very, very excited to see everyone here. Thank you so much for being with us. We at CITL are very excited to co-host this event together with Sustainability Department here at AUS. So the title of our webinar is Education for Sustainable Development. So we will focus on the importance of ESD as a tool to envision a better future and also to reflect on COVID-19's impact on education. And our hope is to exchange and also learn best practices from everybody all around the world, obviously. As such, the theme of our webinar today is something for everyone. So we are hoping that everybody can chip in and then join our forces to make a better learning environment for our students. After all, education is all about human, right? How to be a human, how to connect with one another, and also how to deal with the pandemics. That is the biggest issue that we're facing at the moment. That is a driving force to our webinar today. So we have a wonderful lineup of speakers for you during this 2 days event that we're having. And we are especially excited and grateful to have Dr. Sonia Benjafar joining us. But disconnected. What about everybody else?
We can hear you now.
We can.
Okay, good, because I can't see anybody. Okay, so now I would just like to give the floor to Rose and our co-host for the event. Rose, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Narita. And thank you to everyone for joining us for our webinar series today. I'm very excited to see how many people are interested in this topic. And I wanted to just give a quick overview as to what AUS Sustainability does and why we have teamed up with the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning on this webinar series. Our goal at AUS Sustainability is to work to address global sustainability issues at a local level. We are utilizing our academic resources to transform AUS into a living laboratory. We're generating ideas and forming new behaviors to address the challenges of our changing planet. So we envision all AUS students graduating with a sustainability mindset, and this is the capacity to act in complex situations in a sustainable manner. So we are building this sustainable mindset amongst our students by collaborating with faculty to help bring sustainability into the classroom through events like this. But we also work with faculty individually to help organize field trips, arrange relevant guest speakers, provide campus data sets for projects, and a number of other things. In addition to this, we also engage the AUS community in raising awareness and educating them about sustainability issues. We work with operations to make sure we are wisely using campus resources, and we work to make sure sustainability is part of the AUS vision and is incorporated into our strategic plan, into our operations, and into our KPIs. So we hope that you enjoy our collaboration with CITL on this webinar series. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jeanette Vinke, our Chief Operating Officer, who has been critical in helping us promote sustainability here at AUS. So Jeanette, I share it with you and I'll move
Thank
the
you,
slides.
Ruth, for your kind words. The American University of Sharjah has a mission, right? And for us as educators, we always first go back to the mission. So before I go on and have the honor to introduce our keynote speaker, I'd just like to dwell a little bit on what it is about bringing sustainability into the classroom. And for us educators, we always go back to our mission. I had the privilege of teaching at AUS for quite a few years before coming into this position. And I can relate to all of us who are trying to bring in sustainability into our classrooms, even when it's not a typical topic, a subject that you have in mind that you think relates to sustainability. So our mission, I think all of us can dream it. We provides distinctive teaching, learning, research, and scholarship, educating and mentoring lifelong learners who contribute to society through intellectual inquiry, ethical behavior, and civic responsibility. Sustainable challenges are complex and multifold. And for our students to be able to go out as leaders in this very fast changing world, and for us to do justice to our mission, we have to understand those major sustainability challenges and how do we bring them into the classroom and how to get our students ready. In the limited time, I would just like to focus on one example from sustainability, take you through an example and explain how, for me, it affected my little mini part of AUS, and it'll be the same for the educators here on the panel, how it will affect their part, and also some of our students, of course, how are they going to see it into the classroom. So I thought the biggest issue, the elephant in the room, is the climate crisis, which is a threat to all of humanity and will definitely significantly affect our students in their lifetime, as well as the region that we serve. So thinking about that, if we can have a look at the slide on the screen, which Rose has kindly pulled up. We know that the planet has been there for a very long time. Humanity has been just a blip so far. And really, for most of humanity, we didn't seem to have done much harm. But when the Industrial Revolution started, it set up a chain of events impacting climate change. And we are now at a serious tilting point. If we continue with business as usual, climate change will affect the planet in such a way that many places will be uninhabitable during the lifetime of our students. If we change systems and behavior drastically, some of the worst effects can still be overcome. So in order to do the necessary change and for the change to happen, our students need to be equipped to meet this challenge. How do we ensure that they are equipped? What do we need to do in the classroom for that to happen? Now, I am an accountant and I have been teaching accounting at AUS. And I know that for many of the students or even the parents that would hear, okay, you're doing an accounting course, nobody gets very excited, which is obviously incorrect, but they definitely also don't tend to think about sustainability. However, I would like to explain how even in accounting, sustainability has to play a major role for us to do justice to the mission of the university. So let me talk a little bit about that for about 2 minutes. Accounting measures value. And our accounting system was developed in a manner to suit around the way we have seen humanity in society. If we think back of the previous slide, Industrial Revolution, the man is on top and we use nature for our benefit. It's the ego phase when we think of humanity. Nature was considered free, fresh air, the water, the biodiversity. Accountants didn't count that. We only accounted what we paid for. However, in order to ensure we value nature and protect it, a mindset change is required. So accounting is about measuring. We always say, if you don't measure it, you can't manage us, therefore you need accountants. That's still the case, but in order to preserve the environment, we need to value it, and by measuring it, we can manage it. So the whole mindset around accounting is moving from ego to eco. And eco, as we all know, is an abbreviation for ecology, which is the system of relationships between living things. So no longer just a human on top, but it's between. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. So the ecosystem, the system of relationship between living things, and we need to make sure that we are, as accountants even, we move toward that. And we think about that as far as in the classroom when we talk about accounting. So the changing paradigm for accounting, and Rose, if you can put on that last slide. We think about how social, environmental, and economic. I think I'm frozen.
We can hear you.
Good. and economic, thank you, and economic have to work together. And as accountants, we used to think just of the economic side, but in the classroom, we're talking about bringing those things together. If economic and social are aligned, are equitable, are sustainable. So this is the mindset that we bring in accounting. So the accounting relevance and sustainability, then, by bringing that sustainability into the classroom, our students are the leaders that are going to create the change in society, because they will understand how they need to change the rules, no longer just look at financial statements, but include non-financial disclosures like CO2, etc. They change the math, no longer just the normal cost that we thought of before, but now including the value of nature. And with that, they change the conversation and change the system and move us towards a better world. And with that, in that way, AUS can ensure that we meet our mission. So that was my experience in the accounting classroom, and I know there's many other colleagues that have their own experiences with their own parts. So sustainability really permeates to everything whatever we teach at AUS. I would now like to move on to our real expert, Dr. Sonia Benjafar. It's a great opportunity. So Dr. Benjafar is an incredibly important partner for AUS. Under her leadership, the Al-Hariri Foundation for Education has ensured that top deserving students can study with us and contribute to the betterment of society. Dr. Sonia Benjafar, she currently serves as the CEO, as I said, for the Abdullah Al-Hariri Foundation for Education, which is one of the largest privately funded philanthropic education initiatives in the Arab world. After more than 2 decades helping private and public sectors stakeholders around the world, she is now focusing on the Emirates and the Arab region, and she is passionate about coupling her experience in education with her academic background to promote knowledge sharing and enhance accessible education as widely as possible. Dr. Sonia has extensive experience as an evaluator for international NGOs in both developed and developing country contexts, and also writes and frequently publishes. And I've enjoyed reading some of her content about current education development and trends and topics. So it's a great honor. Thank you so much for your time. And I very much look forward to hearing what you can teach us. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully this is going to work this time. I've been coached, so it shouldn't be a problem. There you go. Everybody see this? We're good? Okay. So welcome everyone. I think that you guys are seeing the wrong screen actually. I'm going to stop this share because I can see that it's the wrong screen. I don't know what happened there. Try this one. Yeah. All right. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry, I can't see you when I'm doing this part. So thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for the introduction. And thank you for talking about accounting and the importance of how we count. It is incredibly important. And what you said about what counts in accounting is really transferable to almost everything that we do, including how corporates stay sustainable or governments start counting how much of the planet we're using, et cetera, and so forth. So it's really very relevant to the talk today, but also to everything everyone's doing in academia and beyond. I just wanted to start with really getting us all on board to understand what I wanted to talk about. And so I'll just start with a video. It's 2.5 minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and launch.
We can be.
We must be
the first generation
To end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
with no one left behind.
We will live in a world
Where nobody
anywhere.
lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
where no one wakes in the morning
Asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world
Where no child has to die.
Diseases we know how to cure.
and where proper health care
Is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
Where everyone
What just happened?
we can be.
We must be
the first generation
To end extreme poverty.
the generation
most determined
to fight injustice
And inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
and this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
with no one left behind.
we will live in a world
Where nobody
anywhere.
lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
where no one wakes in the morning
Asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world
Where no child has to die.
Diseases we know how to cure.
and where proper health care
Is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
Where everyone
goes to school
and education gives us the knowledge
and skills.
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
And be powerful.
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is down.
we will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
And proper toilets
At home,
at school and at work
We will live in a world where
there's sustainable energy for everyone.
heat light
And power for the whole planet.
without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
and new wealth.
Lead to decent jobs.
for everyone
And we will live in a world
where our industry
our infrastructure and our
best innovations
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated
inside our countries.
and between different countries
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
what we consume planet where we put back
What we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back to threat climate
change.
where we restore
and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
will restore
and protect
life on land
The forests,
Animals.
the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law
Where all countries and we their people
Work together.
partnerships of all kinds
to make these goals a reality.
These are the United Nations global goals
For sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
So in terms of how this is connected to a university, when people generally talk about sustainability or the sustainable development goals, who's going to argue with what we just saw? Not only is it well done with a lot of very popular people that everyone knows, but it has a core value set that unites us as human beings in our humanity. And so how do we take that and make it something that has to do with your everyday lesson in a university? And that's what I'd like to talk a little bit about, is building more sustainability into higher education and how to see that with the bigger global mindset and the framework. And so if we just vision forward a minute here and we look at the challenges, the one that was alluded to earlier and is really about what everybody is talking about, of course, is the energy sector. The big changes all have to come from the energy sector. So when we look at a challenge, we look at 18 million people currently employed directly in the energy sector. And half of those people are in fossil fuel extraction sectors. So when there is a nation or a region that wants to make a shift, there are economic factors that need to be taken into consideration, not just planet factors. And so when we look at this, we think, well, what happens to those jobs? And that is something that creates a lot of tension. And we saw this in the States recently, in the recent past. And so my response to that is very much, well, let's vision forward and look at the knowledge that over 80% of energy jobs by 2050 are expected to be in renewables. So yes, there's going to be job losses, but we expect 17.4 million renewable jobs. So the loss is more than compensated for by the gains in jobs in the renewable sector. Now, it's not just in renewables, it's more than that. It's all over. It's 85 million jobs in the next 5 years will be displaced. And we've already seen that during COVID, but we expect to see a lot more of it. Disruptive technologies have the potential to change the types of skills and that employers want and need. The workforce is automating faster than expected, displacing jobs. Today, just before this session, I saw a post from the National about a robot that was brought in, and Schneider Electric is bringing it in for, has modified it for inspections to make inspections safer for human beings into certain industries. So you can see that it's not tomorrow, it's now. And so there's going to be a surge in demands for different kinds of workers. And at universities, it's not about just, fulfilling that demand, but it is about inspiring those who are going to be in that next generation. So we expect 97 million jobs. It's true we're going to lose 80, but we expect 97 million new jobs. The surge in demand for those who can fill the future economy. Now, when we think about that, these people are going to need different kinds of skills. And it's not just about technology skills. In fact, the World Education Forum came out with the top 10 skills of 2025. And if you look at this list, technology use, monitoring and control, and technology design and programming is only 20% of the list. Leadership and social influence, critical thinking and analysis, complex problem solving, resilience, flexibility. And, I get the impression that the STEM field is on board with a sustainability agenda because they have to be part of the technology to be able to enter the new age. But what is important here, especially when we see these top 10 skills, it is that your complex problem solving, your critical thinking, your ability to create comes from the humanities. It comes from when you're actually sitting in your arts classes. It's not just your math and science classes. It is the combination of both. And that it means that all faculty need to get on board with making this potential a reality. And when we look at what that means in terms of sustainable development, it is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That is a 1987 definition. And we've already seen the three circles, economy, environment, and society, in a real way. And it's that intersection where sustainable development is believed to live. And in this new area of the Sustainable Development Goals, we've taken that a step further, and there's circles that overlay on top of this, and that is the 5 Ps. Where we look at our planet to protect our planet's natural resources, because the reality is our planet's going to do just fine without us. It will get rid of us and it'll be fine. We're not worried about the planet for its own sake. We're worried about the planet for our ability to live on it in a long-term fashion. The people to end poverty and hunger, prosperity to ensure prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature, and in harmony with each other, which is what peace is about. And this cannot happen without partnerships. And at the foundation, we pride ourselves on partnerships. And when we talk about sustainable development and sustainability, the way the world has decided to talk about this in an operational way is the Sustainable Development Goals. Right now, that's how most people will talk about sustainability in an operational way where we can talk about real targets. And so the history of it is that we went from MDGs to SDGs. The Millennium Development Goals tackled poverty in developing countries. That got carried over into Sustainable Development Goals, where it's generated by the MDGs, but it's applied to all countries. Today, we're looking at 17 goals that meet the urgent economic, societal, and environmental challenges. They're nationally owned, they're country-led, but they're integrated. And beyond the SDGs, which is more important perhaps, these are challenges that are interconnected. It's a nexus thinking model. And that is now, as we enter this decade of action, it's about connecting them and connecting to solutions. So we need to innovate, we need to localize and contextualize solutions. And so when you look at that, and you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it is the global goals that are put together to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for everyone. And that is a promise for everyone. And it's a promise that the UAE made. And I dare say that promise from the UAE was made before the SDGs caught up, because it was His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the UAE, that said the future generations will be living in a world that is very different from that to which we are accustomed. It is essential that we prepare ourselves and our children for that new world. And that means that education is the nexus of it. It is the linchpin of a sustainable development agenda whose success relies on individuals throughout their lifetime. This is about you as a university, you as a faculty member, you as an educator, as an administrator, to actually engage students on a daily basis so that they can leave, which is what Rose said, with a sustainability mindset, so that they will carry it throughout their lifetime, acquiring relevant knowledge and creating knowledge to develop positive attitudes to address global challenges. And if you look at the Nexus model from the UN and you look at SDG 4, which is quality education, you can see that it influences directly and indirectly peace, climate, responsible consumption, decent work, gender equality, etc., and so on and so forth. So what does that mean for you as an institution? Very specifically for the American University of Sharjah, I was thinking about this and I thought, well, this is interesting because we can look at this in a few ways. SDGs in higher education institutions as a process or as an outcome. Now, as a process, we look at education as an SDG, very much like looking at this Nexus model going through the targets. If we look at it as an outcome, we're no longer looking at just the process, but we're also looking at what you graduate, which are your students, and as a future, the alumni as a workforce and as entrepreneurs. And that means moving from this visual where you are all about the green and the beauty of the campus and making sure that the operational pieces are there, and moving into looking at the mindset and looking at the future and how you're going to teach. So not just looking at the campus and the operational pieces, which you do very well, but making sure that it is embedded in every lesson, in every piece of the values. There are 17 goals and each of them have targets. But if we are to look at it as a process first, we have higher education to look at it as a process. Let's look at the targets that are directly linked to what you do. So target 4.3, to ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including universities. By virtue of you being you're meeting this target. By virtue of the university being present and finding ways to make education accessible, that is what you do every day. Target 4.4, substantially increase the number of youth and adults who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational, for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurships. Every time you engage with a student and get them into that elevated state, that engaged state where they are thinking about what they can learn and how they can contribute and where they're going to go next, and then working towards that, we engage and we start meeting Target 4.4. I always think it's a privilege to be an educator, because just by doing your job, you get to actually make a contribution that is very sustainable to the entire global development. That's always been the case. And it's nice to have that recognized, because it is something, it is a daily grind that is not always seen as with a lot of gratitude from some, but we are seeing a shift in that, because we are seeing a shift in education and its stance in the world. Target 4.5, to eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons of disability, Indigenous, children in vulnerable situations. Every time we decide to take one of our lectures and make them accessible, every time we decide to actually look at our websites and say, is this an accessible website? What can I do differently? We actually engage with Target 4.5. We start to get there better. But the one that I think is perhaps something that everybody can do right now, tomorrow, is try and target 4.7 better. So 4.7 is about ensuring all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equity, promotion of a culture of peace, of nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and a culture's contribution to sustainable development. Now, this one's really interesting because of where we sit in the UAE, the UAE being one of the best places to have tolerance and a harmony of cultures living together. But as educators, I think that we need to assure that in everything that we teach, be it in a literature course, be it in a business course, in a comms course, or in an architecture course, that idea that in everything that we do, we are teaching our kids and our youth and our young adults to have that sustainable development mindset of global citizenship that says the other is just as important as me. That is what it is all about. And then when you look at the indicator attached to 4.7, you see that it is about mainstreaming this. So national education policies are something that you can influence, but university education policies are in your direct control. Curricula is in your direct control. How you teach and how you teach your others to teach is in your direct control. Student assessment is in your direct control. There are things that are not under our direct control, but there are things that are. And if we want to move from having it as a process to moving into having it as something that actionable as an outcome, there are ways that we can find resources as well. And two of these are the Declaration on University Global Engagement and the University Global Coalition. So how to transform those 17 issue areas so that a university can adopt them through the change in policies, curriculum, assessment, teaching, and learning. And the University Global Coalition is, I think, a really great way to start talking about how we can move from a process to an outcome, because they have commitments. The people who got on board with this agreement made in 2019, so it's not that old, got on board to join a collaborative platform of globally engaged universities and higher ed associations working in partnership with the UN and other stakeholders for sustainability. And I've highlighted two of the commitments because I think that they are really attached to what you want to do, which is increasing student understanding of the most pressing challenges facing the world today, as articulated by the SDGs, and then inspiring them, pushing them to play an active role in driving the change to find new solutions. Then the second one is developing the global competence and leadership skills so that they can create a more sustainable future. And when we look at our jobs as universities or as academics or at schools, that is at the heart of what we do. And it's not just fluff that's just nice to hear. It is directly and completely tied to those top 10 skills of 2025. if we do not have kids who understand complex problems and problem solving, then we cannot expect them to be creative and actually find solutions to lead and socially influence others so that they can go back to understanding those most pressing challenges and then playing an active role in driving the change. It's up to us to get them there, to help them get there, so that they can move forward. And so if we look at this and then we move from it as an outcome to it as a future, then I would say that there are 4 core roles to consider: the overarching role of higher education institutions, the role of professors and faculties, the roles of students, the role of the public-private partnerships. And if we put these roles into play in a harmonious way with sustainability at the heart, we can actually just look at our future, and we can look at that today because we already have examples of who that would be. And so I'm going to actually talk about the future in terms of individuals so that you can have an example rather than me talking in theory. And the first person I want to talk about, who unfortunately could not join us today because she's very busy working, is Rania Al-Mahdi. She is an AGFE scholar. She's one of the foundation scholars. She's from Jordan. She has a BS in industrial engineering from the American University of Sharjah. She joined Procter & Gamble after she graduated, which is an American multinational consumer goods corporation headquartered in Cincinnati. It was founded in 1837. And she didn't just join them. She joined them as a supply chain manager, which means that her decisions, the decisions you helped her learn how to make, are strategic decisions around operation management to align an effective supply chain that supports P&G, their consumer goods business. So she's responsible for the condition of the supply chain that determines the capability of the company in terms of productivity and capacity. Now, why is this important? This is important not just because it's just one company, but it ranks 43 in the Fortune 500. The consumer product giant emerged from COVID with strong profits. How many companies can you say that about? They exceeded their own fiscal year 2020 goals by 6% in organic sales. They had 13% core earnings per share growth. That was partially thanks to the fact that all of us needed more home good brands like Charmin, Bounty, Downy, and more, right? They did well, and she's responsible for making sure that that growth does not deplete our planet. That growth does not abuse people in the supply chain line. In fact, their leap in revenue almost across the board, with net sales of 19.7 billion in Q2 in 2021, was plus 8% from 2020. Their share price actually weathered market volatility. It rose over 15% from March 2nd through to May 24th from 2020 to 2021. They increased their quarterly dividends by 10% in April 2021. Now, it's easy to say this might have just been a small blip, but in fact, this was the 65th consecutive year that P&G boosted its dividends. Now, why am I telling you all of this? So what? It's a big multinational. It makes a lot of money because P&G has been reporting on their sustainability since 1999. They have conflict mineral reports, corporate citizenship reports, and environmental sustainability reports. They have sustainability goals for 2030 that are ambitious, that cut across supply chain and employees, society, and brand. When we look at Rania, we look at their 2030 ambition to reduce their supply chain footprint. If she doesn't understand her role within the global context, we don't have a hope of actually reaching that ambition. And P&G do well because they hire people who get it, and she gets it. So I wish that she had a chance to actually talk here, but unfortunately she doesn't. So I will introduce you to our next scholar, Mohammed AlHatib, the future, AGFE scholar from Palestine, MS in Engineering Systems Management from the American University of Sharjah. Now, here's what's interesting about Mohammed, who is with us today, who's going to take the mic over in a second, is that Mohammed got an MS in Engineering Systems. He then went to Johnson & Johnson, But he didn't just go to this American MNC founded in 1886. He actually went as category and digital manager at Johnson & Johnson. So he's part of the development and management of digital touchpoints to deliver communication objectives of J&J's vision care brands. So what does that mean? It means that he's not on the line in the technical piece. It means that he needs to understand their bigger pieces. He evaluates customer research, competitor data, market conditions, and new technologies, identifies trends and insights. He leads and executes all GCC trade marketing initiatives in partnership with sales managers and ensures that results are achieved. Now, I know Mohammed will tell you, I hope he will tell you that he just got promoted because he did well. Now, this is number 46 of the Fortune 500 companies. They include 250 subsidiaries across 16 countries. They have operations in 60 countries. They actually operate in 175. Their worldwide sales last year was $82.6 billion. They are a household name. Now, again, just like every MNC that does really well, they actually subscribe to the SDGs and make it part of their work. Health for Humanity's 2025 goals. They look at the global health equity, their people, their planet, their partners. And this is very important for people like Mohammed, graduates from your university who learn about having a sustainability mindset, need to have that kind of mindset to be able to work in these kind of roles. And so when you look at what the brand wants to achieve, my big question for Mohammed, who will answer it himself, is how did a master's in engineering incorporate sustainability and prepare you for this role at Johnson & Johnson? And so, Mohammed, I'll go ahead and mute and let you answer the question.
Hi, Sonia, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So thanks a lot for this opportunity and giving me the chance to talk on this very interesting and exciting topic as well. So just if you give me a chance to quickly introduce myself, my name is Mohammed AlHatib. I've been born and raised in the UAE. I'm from Palestine. I graduated both my bachelor's and my master's from the American University of Sharjah. My bachelor's is in mechanical engineering and my master's is engineering systems management. I've been with Johnson & Johnson for around 4 years, where I joined them as a graduate trainee, moved to product management team with the consumer goods division, working on Johnson's Baby as a brand. And then recently moved into the vision care division, working on IQView lenses as a category and digital manager. So specifically on your question of how did the master's degree in engineering incorporate sustainability and prepare me for this role. So as you mentioned, Sonia, on referring back to your list on the top 10 skills needed by the next 5 years. So those top 5 of those skills were around problem solving. And that's one of the main things I think I got out of both engineering degrees and both engineering aspects, especially that I did not pursue a very technical role with my degrees. However, as you see with the changing business landscape, and I think the pandemic has basically accelerated that changing landscape, and it gave rise to new challenges and new opportunities as well. As we get those challenges, there becomes a need for more generalization and a workforce that is resilient to those changes and a workforce that can actually handle those changes and handle new challenges as well. This is why kind of an engineering degree prepares you for that, because you have more or less the overall critical thinking, analytical, problem-solving skills, which helps you thrive in whatever role you're in. And over the past 5 years, I've worked in 5 different functions. And each of those functions, they weren't related technically to engineering, but the engineering degree and the engineering mindset helped me succeed in all of these roles, and it's still making me succeed across. Now, with sustainability specifically, I can talk around specific skills that I gotten from my master's that helped me at least understand sustainability and how to incorporate it as well, and what's the importance of it. So I think one of the main things gotten from my master's is around statistics and data analysis, as well as data science as well. It might be a bit unique in terms of answering that from a statistics perspective, but if you look at it, you'll see a lot of abundance of data and abundance of scientific studies and abundance of reports, articles that are coming out as well. But there's also increasing importance on understanding the data behind those studies. If we see a clinical trial, for example, with specific results, it's also important to understand the statistics behind it. What was the trial based on? What was the sample size? What did it represent? Was the sample inclusive or not inclusive? So it's looking at it from this data and having the ability to understand from that perspective is also extremely important. An engineering mindset also helped me understand, okay, so when we come and say we're going to reduce waste, or we're going to make our logistics more efficient, or we're going to use sustainable energy. So what does that, so we hear it all the time, but it's also good to understand it from a technical perspective as well, and the things and the efforts that are needed for us to do those changes, and the bold decisions we need to make those improvements or to have those efficiencies. So understanding it from a technical perspective allows you to appreciate it, number one, and also to act upon it, and in my case, communicate it to our consumers. Because when you're working on brands that actually use a lot of, let's say, plastics or plastic packaging, there is a growing concern on plastic packaging, for example. And we need to make sure we're in a place to answer to our consumers when they tell us, are your products sustainable? Do you have a plan to make your products more sustainable? How are you producing those products? Is it from renewable resources? Are you still using fewer resources? So also having that knowledge and understanding to be able to answer those questions and to answer to our patients and consumers is one of the most important things I've gotten from my degree.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think it's really important, actually, that you did talk about statistics and you did talk about how you were able to pull from every single piece you knew and the importance of communicating out and communicating to others. This is really about all of those skill sets and how you integrate them and use them in your work. And the fact that you work for a company that is so concerned about sustainability and that you are responsible, because the reality is consumerism is changing and people are making their way to companies that are able to do better with regards to sustainability is just a reality. And we're looking forward to more and more of that. So thank you very much for sharing, Mohammed, and thanks for being here. And please stay in case anybody else has a question for you. I'm going to talk about one more scholar, if you will permit me, and that's Mohammed Essam Al-Luzun. And so he is an AGFE scholar and he's from the UAE. He has a master's in civil engineering from the American University of Sharjah and an MBA in finance from the American University of Dubai. And he graduated and he's working with DIWA. And what's interesting about his role in DIWA, I'll go back, is that DIWA supports UAE's efforts to meet its global responsibilities. The UAE has been very public about subscribing to that. He is the operations planning engineer at DIWA. He's an adjunct professor of civil engineering at the University of Balamand in Dubai. He operates Dubai's distribution water network. He studies feasibility of new network connections, and he will plan for emergency distribution water network outages. And this is directly linked to the SDG 6, I believe, is clean water. And so when he talks about supporting UAE's efforts to meet global responsibility to fight climate change, that's part of DIWA's pieces. He helps to increase the shares of clean and renewable energy in Dubai's energy mix. DIWA has decreased by 22% their net carbon dioxide emissions in Dubai, and that is 2 years ahead of their strategy. And the current target now is to reduce the carbon emissions by 16% for 2021. And as a sole supplier of electricity and water to Dubai, it's a top priority for them. And so my question for Mohammed, if you're online, Mohammed, how did your master's in engineering and your MBA programs incorporate sustainability so that you can work towards these goals?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the possibility here to making me present for this great opportunity. If you allow me to introduce myself first, it's Mohammed Essam Al-Luzun, UAE National Civil Engineer working in Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. I work as a water engineer for the past 3 years with DIWA. On top of that, I'm currently working as a part-time professor of Civil Engineering in the University of Belmont in Dubai. As Ms. Sonia mentioned, I had my master's degree in civil engineering from AUS, and during that program, I was exposed to multiple sustainable engineering courses, which are, we can say, sustainable transport planning and sustainable engineering construction materials. So during the sustainable transport planning course, we were exposed to the sustainable transport modes, which promote walkability, cycling, and the use of public transportation. That would definitely help in decreasing the carbon footprint in the environment. So, and will help the shift from the conventional vehicles to the autonomous vehicles. And as aligned by Dubai strategies by 2030, 25% of the vehicles are to be autonomous vehicles in Dubai transportation network. So that would definitely increase the chance of having a more environment-friendly and a sustainable transport system here in Dubai, especially. Moving to talk about the sustainable construction materials, we were exposed to some material that will help decrease the carbon footprint as well, and will accelerate the process of construction, such as green concrete and the process of 3D printing of new buildings. So those two techniques, we were exposed to them in sustainable construction material. Of course, that was with the help of the faculty members, Dr. Adel Tamimi from the American University of Sharjah, and Dr. Ghassan Abu Libda. They're both from the Department of Civil Engineering in the American University of Sharjah.
Thank you, Mohammed. So as we look at the future, I think these are three perfect examples of exactly if we embed that sustainability mindset, they will take it in whatever direction it needs to go. And that is when, for me, when I look at the role of professor, student, private partnerships, and what you do is how can you embed it more in every lesson, embed it more in every opportunity. And a really low-hanging fruit, especially now, is actually the Sustainable Development Impact Summit, which is coming up from the 20th to the 23rd. So I wanted to make sure you had something very concrete where you can take case studies. And this is hosted alongside the United Nations General Assembly. And it's about how to accelerate the recovery. And it's a platform for laying the foundation to work beyond the silos and across stakeholders. And so this is just one example of some of the blogs that you're going to see if you go to the site. So you can really just grab some very quick, easy reads that are not very long and that talk about artificial intelligence, the SDIS, environmental natural resources, and then different places like India, et cetera, so on and so forth. And in fact, the upcoming blog is going to showcase that this is not just about us or academics, it is being imposed on everyone. And one of the calls will be 5 ways that multinationals can expand their impact on the SDGs, very much like Johnson & Johnson is doing, Unilever, all of them, NG. And one of the biggest thing is put it on the scorecard of the CEO because it's going to matter. And I guarantee you, if it's on the scorecard of the CEO, it will trickle down onto the performance management of every employee. So it's important that we're already there because this is the future. For those people who are not already on board, they're going to have to get there. And so sustainability in HEI, so when we're looking at that for you in particular, the reality is you already are there and so close to just tipping the balance. You already are pressing for your students to get it. You're already winning awards for it in terms of your operations. And now it's just moving beyond that and making sure that you actually have it in every single lesson and in all of the other creative ways that universities can do that. And I'm going to close there and I'll stop sharing my screen and open it up. I'm sorry that there's not a lot of time, but there's still some time for questions, I hope. Thank you. Let's see if I can do that.
Narita, you're muted.
Yeah.
Narita, you're still muted. I'm sorry. Your microphone is not on. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Wadi. I was just saying that thank you so much, Sonia, for this very inspiring talk, and also thank you for bringing back some of our students, because it really, I guess, we need this kind of discussion to hear back from our students, so we know exactly what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and how exactly can we improve further. And as part of the strategy that we're doing here at AUS as well, we want to make sure that we will always improve and keep innovating. So this is really something that we need to hear today. So if anybody have any question, if you want to come to your mic, just please raise your hand. We can promote you and you can come forward and talk directly to us. If not, please feel free to enter your question in the chat. Okay, let me just see if there's any questions. So I see a lot of different comments. So people are very happy, I guess, to hear what you had to say, Sonia, because this kind of, I guess, reassures every single thing that we're trying to put together here at AUS. So thank you again for that. Okay, let me just scroll. Yeah, so a lot of people are just saying that this is really nice to hear, coming from a student and coming from somebody with your ability to make changes. Also, I just want to add here is that moving forward, we are hoping that we can do a lot more collaboration. Obviously, we as academic institution, we definitely need to do a lot more in terms of preparing our future students for the future work and for the future of the world as well. If there is no further question,
I just want to say, my Zaki wrote highlight on the connection between sustainability and the humanities. Oh, yeah, I just thought,
okay,
you
so
know,
there's
digital humanities, for example. Well, it's a comment, but I thought it's a really important one to make, you know, its roles. And I was wondering, would this person, May Zaki, comment a little bit more on that, if they're willing to, because I think that this one is incredibly important. Like I said before, I think that there is, May, great, thank you. If you would take the mic, I think that it's really, what you're talking about is incredibly important. And I would love for your professors, especially your humanities professors, to hear this directly from you, because I've said this and I'll say it again, I have great hope, only because this is a generation that will not accept not being sustainable in the future and not being taught it now. So May I pass the mic to you, or Mai?
Yes, sure. It's May. And thank you so much, May, for joining us all the way from, you're in the UK right now, right, May?
Yeah, thank you so much for picking up on my comment, because I love talking about sustainability in higher education, but every time it's all about sciences and economics and finance and things like that, and the humanities get kind of, you know, forgotten a little bit. But so that's why I wanted to highlight this point. I'm in humanities, and specifically in digital humanities, I think it's really picking up all over the world. For our part of the world, in the Arab world, we have a huge responsibility in catching up with what's happening in digital humanities, whether we are studying the past, whether we're studying our history, our texts, our old texts, or our modern ones. digitization is playing a very important role in maintaining these studies and making them more sustainable, more accessible for people. In today's world, you don't have to travel miles away to get access to a historic book, for example. So there's a lot of work that's been done in digital humanities, and I think in this part of the world, we actually need to do more, and we try to incorporate it in our teaching as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that I have nothing to.
Yeah, thank you so much, May, and thanks again for joining us all the way during your sabbatical. Yeah, do we have any other questions? If not, I'm just going to wrap up these sessions. Thank you again, Sonia. Thank you again for to Mohammed, the two Mohammeds, for joining us. We really appreciate the feedback that you have to say here. Okay, so now I'm going to pass the floor to Rose. We are going to move to the second session that we have here. It's a panel discussion. So please stay tuned with us.
Thank you so much, Narita. So yes, so our next session is a panel discussion integrating sustainability principles into the classroom. And so I'm excited to introduce our three panelists and to talk to them more about this idea of integrating it into the classroom. We have Dr. Victoria Tate, who is a lecturer practitioner in education for sustainability at Anglia Ruskin University in the UK. We have Mr. Camilo Ciro, Associate Professor of Architecture in the College of Architecture, Arts and Design here at AUS. And we have Ms. Rania Taihi, who is the head of she works as the head of CRS and PR and communications at eWings here in Dubai. And so we've put this panelist together coming from three different perspectives. So Victoria is coming from the idea of not only teaching sustainability specifically, but teaching faculty to integrate sustainability into the work that they're doing and making sure that they're touching on that. Camilo is a professor here on campus who brings sustainability from that perspective, brings sustainability into his classroom. And Rania is a practitioner out there working in the field and seeing what recent graduates, what new young entrants into the workforce are coming with. And so we want to talk to them all from their different perspectives. So I'd like to start the conversation with each of you. We'll start with you, Victoria. If you could give a brief overview of your background and your connection to sustainability in your own words.
Thank you so much, Rose. It's great to be with you here today. So my name is Victoria Tate, and I'm a lecturer practitioner in education for sustainability at Anglia Ruskin University. And I'm based in a research institute at Anglia Ruskin called the Global Sustainability Institute. So my background is really in education. I started out teaching English as a foreign language in Hong Kong and in France, and I spent a bit of time working in Switzerland, where I led outdoor education programs. I then moved more directly into sustainability and education, and I spent almost 3 years working at a charity called SEED, which stands for Sustainability and Environmental Education. And in that role, I provided capacity building support for primary and secondary school teachers, enabling them to take what we referred to as a whole institution approach to embedding sustainability into their curriculum, their campus, and their community. So that's kind of encompassing the whole institution approach. So in this position, I ran our annual National Sustainable Schools Conference. I supported the delivery of our Learning for Sustainability Facilitation course, and I ran training workshops for teachers, both based here in the UK and around the world as well. So in my current role as a lecturer practitioner in education for sustainability at Anglia Ruskin, as Rose kindly said, my role is split between sort of two sides really. So on the one hand, I actually teach sustainability as part of specific modules, but I also support the delivery of the university's sustainability strategy as a whole. And the strategy takes, again, a whole institution approach to sustainability, and it encompasses all elements of our university, from our curriculum and research to our campuses and community. The teaching that I'm actually doing at Anglia Ruskin relates to the concept of climate justice and social inequality, and making sure the links between the two are made explicit for our students.
Wow, great. Very excited to hear more about what you're doing and how it's working at Anglia Ruskin. So Camilo, could you talk a little bit and give a brief overview of your background and your connection to sustainability?
Sure. So I'm a principal of an architecture office in Brooklyn called Architecture, and I'm a professor of architecture and interior design here at the American University of Sharjah. My research works basically on how we're going to live in the next 10 years. And due to that, all the work I do is based on sustainable principles within architecture. But because of the nature of how architecture and interior design work, the idea of sustainability has had a shift. We are moving too slow, and
it looks like we might have potentially lost Camilo just a little bit. So Rania, why don't you go ahead and jump in and talk about a brief overview of your background and your role with sustainability, and we'll get back to Camilo when he comes back.
Perfect. Thank you, Rose. Good afternoon, everyone. As Rose has introduced me, my name is Rania, and I'm the head of CSR, PR, and communication at eWings. My journey with CSR and sustainability started more than 15 years back. That time when I was still working for a company called Dubai Aluminium, and after a joint venture, now everyone knows the company as Emirates Global Aluminium. So with Dubai and EGA, I was responsible for the CSR agenda. And after 14 years, I had the opportunity to join another very exciting organization called TransGuard Group. It was a part of the Emirates Group. It's basically a manpower provider. And from there, I moved to work for another also young organization called eWings. eWings is a technology development operator. And then when it comes to my involvement in sustainability and CSR, I've been involved in many projects ranging from community development to social impact projects, working with various stakeholders and beneficiaries. I've also been involved in working on a lot of environmental projects related to waste management, energy efficiency, and so forth. What is exciting in my journey in sustainability is where during this kind of, I would say, my journey and the evolution of my journey, where I went back to university. And this is where we are talking here about education. I went back to university and I felt there is a need to equip myself with the right skills and the right, I would say, the knowledge to basically be able to be part in this sustainability journey. So I've done my master in green economy from a UK-based university called Bournemouth University. So for me, when I think about sustainability, it's a passion. Yes, it is a career. Yes, it is a job, but also it's a passion. And I hope through this panel today, I'll be able really to pass on my experience in that because for me, there was evolution also with the stakeholders that I was working with from a very traditional approach to more of, I would say, very engaging and interactive approach to implement sustainability projects. So this is in a nutshell, and I'm not sure if Camilo is back on track to start our panel, but I'd like maybe we can start our discussion rather than talking and focusing about my journey. Thank you, Rose.
So certainly, absolutely. Camilo, you cut out right when you were saying that we're not moving fast enough in the industry. So go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know what happened. It just the window
never
just
fails.
disappeared. So the architecture functions in a very specific way where we're looking at the future constantly, and sustainability is moving too slow. So right now we are, at least the sustainability movement in architecture is really moving towards survivability. So sustainability is not enough, it's moving too slow and it should be there. But right now we teach adaptability. How are we going to adapt to this new world that it's in front of us? And to do that, from a research perspective, I work with technologies and I predict how we're going to live in the future. And one side of our work has to do with floating architecture, producing food at home, producing energy at home. But the other side has to do with the colonization of Mars. So here at the university, we've had the studios that work on all of these subjects. I have a master's from Columbia University. I've been teaching here in the UAE for 7 years, I think. Basically, the approach we have around the events and the things I create for AUS is one in which we have to teach agency to the students. That teaching sustainability is pretty useless if the student doesn't believe that he can be a participant in the process. And to do that, we've developed a study abroad program in the city of Barcelona that focuses on sustainable technologies and sustainable systems. And all the work that we do here at the US revolves around the implementation of sustainable technologies and materials and all of these emerging technologies into our process. But we also try to work from the perspective of the social. So a lot of the work we do
So it looks like we froze up again. So we'll go ahead and jump to the first question. And Rania, I'll throw this one at you. Why is it important why do you think, from your perspective, and going back to university and having with this idea, now that you've come out of that experience, why do you think it's important to integrate sustainability into the classroom?
Well, Rose, if I need to go back a little bit to Dr. Sonia's quote, or basically it's a very multinational quote where we say that sustainability, and what is sustainability? I mean, if I need to really, because when I was doing my research, I was looking at the few terminologies and to how Europe looks at sustainability, how the Middle East or the MENA region looks at sustainability. So if we look at sustainability and what it means, basically is to meet our own needs without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. In another word, it's a responsibility to use the available resources without exploitation. So to go back to your question, to answer why it is so crucial for us to integrate sustainability in the classroom, simply my simple answer to this question is basically in the classroom, we're going to be producing, or basically the new CEO, the future CEO will be born, the future engineer will be born, the future scientist will be born. So in order to do that, it's not anymore crucial for us to equip our students with the right skills. In fact, what is more critical for us is to integrate sustainability into the classroom, to equip our student with the right skills to be able to meet the future jobs that Dr. Sonia was talking about. So we were talking about thousands and millions of jobs that will be created. Those green jobs, right now, if you are following the traditional way of graduating as an engineer or as a scientist or as a teacher or as an IT, and you don't have the right skills and the right understanding and knowledge for sustainability, so that means you will not be able to succeed in the new work environment. So Rania Madi from Procter & Gamble, Mohammed as well from DIWA, and our other colleague, person who spoke from the Johnson & Johnson perspective. All those people, in order for them to succeed in their new jobs and new opportunities, they had to be well equipped. So here we're talking about changing the mindset. So without this change of the mindset, there is no change. Without this knowledge, we will not be able to move and change. Dr. Camilo, just right now in the introduction, he was talking that sustainability agenda is moving very slow, and we need to be really ready. So as an engineer, in order for you to implement any project, you need to learn more about the environmental practices. You need to learn about the social impact, how you're going to design it to be more sustainable, and maybe we're talking about the green building. So this is it's very crucial at the moment. The way I see it, sustainability and the right technical skills, they work and they go hand in hand together. Without that, unfortunately, we'll not be able to achieve much. So moving forward, if we don't integrate sustainability in our day-to-day job, that means there is something missing. And then if we talk about it from a CEO perspective, in order for you to have a profitable business, you need to have a sustainable business. So this is basically in a nutshell, my feedback on such a question.
Thank you so much. And Victoria, I'll throw the question to you. Why do you think it is so important to integrate sustainability into the classroom?
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I mean, so kind of coming at this, I guess, from an educational background, my approach is really focused on learning and teaching and what benefits students can get through that. So kind of in this respect, one of the reasons that I think it's so important that we integrate it into our classrooms is that it provides that real world focus for topics that students are studying. And I think, there's lots of examples of how that can actually work in practice. I'll just maybe go through a couple now. So if we take a subject like maths, for example, students can apply, their mathematical skills and knowledge to calculations that are linked to things like renewable energy or carbon emissions, or the analysis of statistical data that might be linked to societal issues such as the gender pay gap. If we think about other subjects, in English, for example, you can have students who learn about persuasive writing skills, and they can then actually put that into practice by writing to the local council or to politicians, or even to their head teacher within their own school or their vice chancellor within their university, and asking them to do more to lead on sustainability. So I actually have an example of what this might look like as well. So the Global Sustainability Institute, where I work, turned 10 this year, and as part of our 10th anniversary celebrations, we contacted 10-year-olds around the world, and we asked them to write letters to world leaders about what they felt the future should look like in 10 years' time. And we then worked with illustrators from Anglia Ruskin. So we have a course on BA, it's a BA course on illustration. And we asked those students to illustrate this book for us. And this book, which you can see here, it's called Dear World Leaders. This has been sent to world leaders in advance of COP26, which is happening this November. So you can kind of see on one side, you've got the student illustrations, and on the other side, you've got comments linked to the letters that students wrote for us. So I think this is a really nice example of putting your learning into practice and applying it to that real world context. Another sort of simple example, I guess, is if you have an allotment on your school grounds or on your university campus, you can use this, as part of a lesson on food technology, so students actually have a better understanding of the processes involved in producing food and in eating a diet that's more seasonal. So I think from that learning and teaching perspective, sustainability, it can help learning to become a much more active and engaged process for young people, and it can really help to bring the topics that they're studying to life and to sort of help to prepare them for the future. I think another reason, again, coming from the learning and teaching perspective, why sustainability is so important in classrooms is that it opens up space for interdisciplinary learning and teaching. And I think particularly at a higher education level, this is so crucial. So often we're working in our silos. So you've got someone studying, business over here, and you've got someone studying conservation or fine art or whatever the subject is over there, and they never talk. And that just doesn't reflect the real world. When we're actually, out there working in the real world, we're in communication with people from a whole range of different sectors. So I think building interdisciplinary learning and teaching into courses is a really critical way for us to help students to consider problems from a range of diverse perspectives. And that's something we really need to be doing if we're going to tackle those huge sustainability challenges we face. And then just finally, if I've got time, there's just one additional point around why it's so important, I think, which links to what the deeper purpose of education is. So, the future is becoming an increasingly uncertain place. And I think we need to reflect on why we're teaching in the first place. What is the point of the education system? And in England, there's actually a group of over 100 universities and NGOs and sort of student union groups and variety of different people who are looking specifically at this question in relation to a target that exists in the Sustainable Development Goals. It's target 4.7. And essentially that target says that by 2030, all learners should acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. And that includes things like education for sustainable development and human rights and gender equality. So I think it's that deeper question of, what is the point of all of this? Why are we doing it in the first place?
Wow, I don't think you were here for Dr. Sonia's presentation, but that wraps in perfectly with her presentation. She really hit on the importance of 4.7. And so I love to see that these things, that it is also interconnected, not just with the Sustainable Development Goals, but how we're thinking about these things and how this is being applied, theoretically and in the field. Both through the foundation and through your university. So that's fantastic. And Camilo, I'd like to ask you, I think Victoria really hit on that real world experience. And when I think about the work that you're doing, I know that that's been very important to you to really give students that real hands on what it really means. And I know with your work in New York that this has been important to you. So why do you feel it's important to integrate sustainability into your class?
Try to be fast before I'm kicked out again.
Speak quickly.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, there's many answers to that, but I think the bottom one, sadly, is survival of the species. We are a very young species, and we haven't passed the threshold of survivability yet. And this moment we're living on is an important one for that. And designers have a role to play in terms of that. Our students learn agency through experiential learning. And the experiential learning that we do has a component of making. So by touching and by building everything that we design, the students are learning the value of a material over another material, which inherently starts talking about locality and the sustainability of locality. But to enhance that, we
Apparently, we put a time limit on Camilo's answers. He was right. He has about a 2-minute window to speak. So we will go ahead and continue to move forward and catch up with him when he jumps back on. So Victoria, I'll jump back to you. So as we see more organizations and institutions recognizing the importance of sustainability that was really highlighted by Dr. Sonia with the examples of Johnson & Johnson and DEWA and the work that Rania was doing, we hear more dire news about the recent UN IPCC reports. There's more urgency in integrating sustainability into higher education. If you had some ability, what bold actions do you think we should be taking to ensure that youth are prepared for the workforce?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. We are running out of time. We do need to take bold action. So I'll start by giving an example of something that's happening at Anglia Ruskin that I think is a really bold transformation. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, interdisciplinary learning and teaching for me is key to achieving sustainability and also to supporting our students to develop those key employability skills that have been touched on by the panel already. And in recognition of this, Anglia Ruskin has launched a new scheme called the Ruskin Modules. So Ruskin Modules are interdisciplinary modules that are led by groups of staff from different parts of the university, and they're delivered to students from across our second year undergraduate cohort. And all of these Ruskin modules are framed by the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So a really broad range of modules have been created, and these include topics such as artificial intelligence in the future, is it a threat to humanity, climate injustice and social inequality, can you be an agent of change, and what is the real price tag of fashion? And you'll notice that each of these topics has been framed as a question, and that's been done intentionally to kind of provoke our students into sort of thinking critically about these issues. So just to delve in a little bit deeper into one of the modules, so we've got a module on climate change and social inequality, and in that students are going to be learning about, who is most likely to be affected by climate change, who's done the least to contribute to these problems, what does environmental racism have to do with all of this? And they'll be looking at examples from the US and also from the UK. I think crucially in the module, they'll be gaining the skills that they need to take action to work with some of the people who are most vulnerable and who are going to be affected most, and to do so in a way that's fully participatory. But what's really unique about this module is that it's been developed as a collaboration by a staff member working in social work and a staff member working in our Global Sustainability Institute. So there's so much learning that's happening between those two staff members to get to the point to even be able to deliver the module. And then on top of that, you've got students coming from, basically every single course that we have at Anglia Ruskin studying on the module. So In total, the modules are going to be delivered to 2,400 students. So it's, it's a huge undertaking. We've got about 20 modules, and there've been around 25 staff members who are directly involved in delivering the modules. But I would say almost every single person in the university has been involved in the wider development of them. So it's been a really transformational process for the institution, and it's also taken place over a 2-year period. So we had to go through something called a course design intensive, where we made space essentially in our traditional courses for these new extracurricular 15 credit modules. And I think for the staff who've been involved, it's been quite a transformational sort of process. So we've had comments, because we did some research on this. So staff have said, it really helps them to feel more like a community and to understand what's actually happening across the institution, so that we're not just working in those individual silos, and really feeling like the whole institution is going to benefit. So that's kind of from the teaching perspective. From the kind of physical environment perspective, because I think this plays a really important role in shaping students' expectations of what a sustainable future should look like, and then taking that forward into their own workplaces. So just to give an example of that, in Cambridge, it's very common for people to cycle, and there's a lot of infrastructure set up for people to cycle around the city. And that really helps to reinforce the attitude that cycling and public transport should be the norm rather than the exception. And hopefully that's something they're going to take forward. But a really bold initiative that I've seen recently came out of a couple of universities in Berlin who have basically planned to essentially eradicate meat from their campuses. So they're now going to offer meat once a week. And this came about because of pressure from the student body. So students making demands about, we don't want to have meat in our canteen, we want to take action for climate change, etc. And I think that's a really nice example of students demonstrating those leadership skills that are obviously going to be really critical when they go out into workplaces. And it's a bold action that I would like to see us replicating at Anglia-Ruskin University.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think I agree. And I love that, one of the things that I think is so important is that civic, that global citizen and that civic engagement. And to hear that students are actually doing that and pushing forward to meet their goals, that's fantastic. So Camila, while we have you, why don't you go ahead and finish up on the classroom, and then talk about some bold actions that you would like to see, or that you think we could take?
So I was saying that we teach experientially, and that takes us outside a lot, and it takes us to engage with communities, and it takes us to do field work. And thanks to that, we were able to generate a bunch of summer trips for the students. That culminated in a Barcelona Study Abroad program that basically functions around the theme of sustainability. But the other trips, we've taken students to Cambodia, for example. And it puts students from the Middle East in places they probably will never visit again in their lives. And especially AUS students get to see poverty. And after living a month in one of those communities, they learned that that was not a poor community. See? So there's a social interaction that we are adding to our design components that is very important in terms of our academic approach towards understanding sustainability, which puts the student face-to-face with social sustainability. So it's not just materials, and it's not just technologies in that sense. And what was your second question?
So what kind of bold action would you like to see happening in higher education to push us forward in meeting our sustainability goals?
So before I'm disconnected again, I think I think that we have to stop being fashionably sustainable. As Victoria said a moment ago with her example of the meat in the cafeteria, if we're going to take sustainability and the needs of the planet seriously, we've already run out of time 15 years ago. So we need to start changing ourselves faster. Humans don't change quickly, and that has been one of the major problems. We need to become vegetarians. We need to start acting in ways where we don't consume plastic
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Poor Camilo. We will jump back to him. Rania, what do you think needs to, what bold actions do you think that higher education needs to be taking for us to be able to be on track with meeting our sustainable development goals?
Okay. I mean, if I think about it, and if I reflect on the topic of that we are discussing today, I took the liberty to do a little bit of research about youth, especially youth in this part of the world and worldwide. So one of the figures that really attracted my attention, and it really scared me to the point that I feel like there is a lot of responsibilities when it comes to the education system to equip the new generation to be more sustainable. I would say advocates. So if we think about the recent figures released, we have around 1.8 billion young people in the world today. Here we're talking about the largest generation of youth in history. So if we think about it, and if I go back, take one step back and I reflect about this number, you're talking, let's say 1 billion of the 1.8 billion seek higher education. So if you think about it and you think about the bold action that needs to be taken, I'm not going to talk about the infrastructure of the university, and I will not talk about what are we improving, how we are reducing waste in those universities. I think what is really crucial for higher education and the bold action that needs to be taken is basically to integrate sustainability in the curriculum. And what I mean by that, not to have it as elective, but to have it as mandatory. So why students, today's students, why they need to take math? Why do they need to learn about accounting, about marketing, about, social media and PR and communication? If those are mandatory topic, whatever, I'm not someone coming from the academic background, I'm in the corporate. But if those are the mandatory topic to equip our future, I would say, engineers and CEOs and scientists and teachers, if those are the mandatory topics, that means sustainability has to basically make a major shift from being an elective topic to becoming a mandatory topic. Students during their graduation projects, they need to adapt and adopt sustainability projects that will integrate sustainability in those graduation projects. So I think what the higher education, the bold action needs to be taken is basically to start bridging between the private sector and the educational institutions in order for us to move forward. So if you look at the corporate today, they are integrating sustainability up as a part of the balanced scorecard and the departmental KPIs. If this is what we are reaching, why don't we start from the university? Why don't we start from when we are equipping them to move forward? So the way I see it, the education system has to integrate this topic as part of the curriculum. This is, I think, it has to be one of the bold action that needs to be taken in order for us to move forward. If we keep it elective, it will always be elective. And the student will have the choice whether they want to do. I might be a little bit extremist in this, but I think it is crucial because I have myself my own experience in this. In 2015, when I was looking at some higher education in sustainability, and I really wanted to attend the classes. I couldn't find in this MENA region, and Dr. Sonia can confirm that. In 2015, in UAE and in the Gulf region, there was no universities where you can attend the classes to learn about the sustainability topics. So the only online course that I managed to find was in UK, and that really helped me. So that means also the higher education has to also, besides making it mandatory, they have to also find the means for the student to learn. So whether if you are sitting in UK, whether you are sitting in Dubai, or whether you are sitting in US, you would need to be able to access those, I would say, systems or educational system. So this is, at least from my point of view, sustainability we should shift it from an elective topic to a mandatory topic to equip the student with the right skills. So this is my thought about it.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important, the idea, so if you're going to do an example that we're doing here at AUS is, you mentioned social media. We're working with social media professors to look at campaigns that are addressing sustainability. So integrating it into, so they're keeping their curriculum as it is, but integrating that topic into there. So they're putting that over that lens of all the things that they need to learn. And now they're having to learn additionally about sustainability and what that means and how you would run a campaign and how you would address all that. So absolutely, I think that I think you're right that this is the bold actions that need to be taken. And I also would say that we need to have more of that here, because one of the things that we hear a lot from our students is that that they're very interested in sustainability at a local level. They want to know, yes, you can take a class in the UK, you can take a class in the US, you can take a class in Hong Kong, but they want to know how it is applied here. And it's very hard to get those examples. So we need to have local hands-on experiences that explain to them what this means here. You know, what does your greenhouse gases mean here? We know how to calculate them based on the imperial system in the US, but what does it mean when you're doing it into metric and you're trying to do all of these different things? So absolutely, right there with you. So Camilo, what kind of bold actions would you like to see happening?
That's complicated. As I said before, the biggest thing I would like to see is to stop treating sustainability as a fashion thing. The change that needs to happen needs to be drastic. It needs to be something never before seen. So it's not so much just at the university levels. Countries have to change drastically. And that's why I'm a pessimist about all of this, because are you going to stop driving your car? Oh, well, it's not practical in Dubai. Well, that's not a good excuse. See, are you going to become a vegetarian? Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Then what are we doing? Are cleaning the trash, separating trash? Look what happened in New York recently. No, China stopped buying the trash. So New York doesn't have recycling facilities. So it doesn't matter if you're recycling at home, that trash is just being accumulated because they never thought about having recycling facilities. So before I'm shut off again, I think that anything helps, but I would recommend people challenge themselves to do more every week. And with that exponential growth, then change is going to be drastic, because right now we're at a point where it's the only thing that's going to give the children that we're teaching a future. This generation, the millennial and post-millennial generation, are going to have the hardest lives compared to ours than any generation before. They're going to earn less than their parents. Acquiring a home is going to be harder for them, and they're going to be dealing with a climate crisis stronger than anything we've ever seen. So that's why we teach adaptability. This generation is going to need to adapt fast, and that can start happening in kindergarten. It doesn't need to happen at the university level. A lot of things, if you're learning them at university level, it's already too late, especially the basics. The university's job shouldn't be to teach you the basics. Shouldn't be there to teach you the basics about sustainability.
I definitely like that message, and it is important to realize that every action does count, and that we all need to be taking actions to address this on many levels. So I have one more question, Camilo. While we seem to be on a roll here, so I'm going to go ahead and go with you. From your experience, what do you feel are the obstacles facing students with addressing sustainability in the classroom?
Culture. Everywhere, not just here, everywhere. The consumeristic cultures that we live in are drastically the opposite of sustainable cultures, you know? And this country is doing incredible things in very short times to address that. But again, humans learn slowly and we change even slower, you know? So it has to start at a very young age, and it has to be pervasive on everything we do. It needs to become second nature. It shouldn't be something we're talking about in a webinar about the future of education. It should be so inherent in the future of education that it would be useless to turn it into a conference kind of theme, because it would be evident to everybody, but it's not.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. So Victoria, from your experience, what are the obstacles facing faculty in integrating sustainability into their classrooms? And what would you say are some ways that they could address that?
Yeah, again, it's a really excellent question. It's something I probably come up against almost more than kind of seeing sustainability in practice at times, which can be frustrating, as you can imagine. So I think kind of there's sort of three main challenges that I've found I come up against time and time again when working with staff at Anglia Ruskin. I know this is common across universities in the UK. The first one I would say is time. So I think staff often feel so overburdened with their kind of pre-existing teaching loads, with the research that they've got to do, with other kind of scholarly activities that they need to carry out as part of their role as academics. Adding something new or asking them to add something new to the curriculum like sustainability, I think can feel like a really time-consuming task. And I think particularly within kind of higher education and academia, obviously, staff want to feel like the experts in a topic. And so I think they kind of feel like they need to go away and spend a lot of time researching that before they can actually teach it to students. So that is kind of a main barrier that I come up against. The second challenge I would say is a lack of agency. So I think often this kind of comes up more for staff who've either just joined the university or who might be at quite an early stage in their career. So maybe have just got their PhD and it's their first position. They quite often, this group of people, feel really passionate about sustainability. It's a topic they're really interested in. But if they're not a course leader or a module leader, they just can feel like they don't have the authority to say, I'm going to put this into my curriculum. I'm going to make this, a key part of what I'm teaching. And I think that can be a very disempowering feeling for staff members. And then I would say the last barrier that tends to come up quite frequently is a lack of understanding about what sustainability actually is. So I think the term can be seen as too confusing, as a kind of catch-all that means everything and nothing at the same time. Or it can be something that I think staff think students just aren't going to understand, and they don't particularly want to, go into that discussion with students for some reason. So those are kind of the three main challenges I definitely come up against. And I think that's actually, having looked at the academic literature, that is quite often reflected in there as well. Yeah. And then in terms of kind of, I guess, solutions that I've come up with and that other people have come up with as well, I would say for the time constraint one, don't view sustainability as an additional topic. It's kind of been mentioned already that it's a lens through which we should be approaching everything. It can be 100% integrated into what you're already doing. And I think with the Ruskin modules at Anglia Ruskin, we've chosen to use the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework. And I think that's a really useful way of doing it. There's so many sort of entry points that you can use if you're taking the kind of Sustainable Development Goals as your starting point. And, just a course that I'm working with at the moment is our fashion design course. So thinking about how you could integrate it there without doing sort of too much work, I guess, is, just have a consideration of where the materials that you're using are sourced from, how they're produced, and what is going to happen to them after we've finished using them. Actually, Camilla, you've already mentioned architecture. Again, I do a bit of work with our architecture course. So, it's those questions around how do we future-proof our homes? What does the future of kind of architecture look like? What impact is that going to have on people living in fuel poverty, which is an issue we face a lot in the UK. So, sustainability, it should be about balancing the environmental, the societal, and the economic. And what I often say to staff members when I'm working with them is think about which of these aren't present in your module, and then how you might integrate that rather than thinking you need to start from scratch because you're not doing any of it. You're absolutely doing it. In terms of the kind of the lack of authority, this is one that I find a bit harder. When I used to do a lot of work with primary and secondary school teachers, a lot of them would feel quite lonely and like they were the only person that actually cared about these topics because maybe they were the only person in their school that was focusing on it. So I would say for people who have maybe just started at an institution or are very early in their career, reach out to other people. So whether it's within your institution or, across different institutions in the UK, start a sustainability network, get a bit of discussion going around this, and then you can maybe make the case as to why it needs to be in your curriculum if, you know, your line manager, your course leader of the course you're teaching on doesn't maybe see eye to eye with you. I mean, we have also talked about being bold today, so, you know, also just go for it, just ask, just put it in there. I think sometimes asking for forgiveness after you've done something can be the best approach. So, you know, just be bold. And then the last one around the uncertainty over the concept of sustainability. This is definitely something that comes up a lot, and it's also criticism that I've heard leveled at the Sustainable Development Goals as well. That, you know, there's too many of them. There's 17. It's too much. So I would say in response to that, don't necessarily focus on sustainability as a concept if you're finding it kind of too intangible, but think about the systems. So it really, you know, sustainability really is about that environmental, economic, and societal impact. So think about the connections and the interactions between these, not the fact that they're kind of separate entities. And this is what I personally do like about the Sustainable Development Goals, and why I kind of advocate for them to be used as part of the Ruskin modules, is that if you kind of dig deeper into the Sustainable Development Goals, you understand that from their conception, they were intended to be interconnected and indivisible. So, you know, you can't think about fixing gender equality if you haven't thought about how we're going to achieve quality education or climate action or sustainable consumption and production. So these things are all connected. And I think it's that we should be making explicit to students. It's the systemic links and the connections that they need to understand and be aware of before they go out into the working world.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that nexus approach of looking at the Sustainable Development Goals is so valuable, and there's resources out there that just show each. Dr. Sonia shared one, but there's one for each Sustainable Development Goal that shows, you know, where it sits in the middle in all the different goals and all the different subtasks that it's related to. And if you took that into a supply chain management class and just said, okay, you know, let's look at, you know, SDG 12, and look, you have to think about all of these other components when you're thinking about that. I think that that's such a powerful visual and such a powerful lesson for people to understand that it's not just about the delivery of the item or you know, the specific task. There's so much more. That system is so much bigger. So absolutely, that's great. So Rania, one last question for you as well. From your experience, what knowledge or skills do young practitioners, whether they're focusing on sustainability or not, what do they need to be successful in making smart, sustainable decisions in industry today?
I think besides learning about general sustainability issues, learning about the different issues and the different topics, I think what will be really important for the student to be well equipped is basically to specialize, to have more specialization in what they are learning, rather than keeping it generic. So, for example, if we take a look at the Sustainable Development Goals, here we're talking about 17 of them. You're talking about different topics related to no poverty, zero hunger, health and well-being. So if we look and we link all those together, here we're talking about maybe it could be a sustainable agricultural system. So it could be related to the efficiency in water and energy. So the sustainability issues and the sustainability topics are there is a quite wide range of them. So I think if you are able or capable to specialize in those, it will be crucial and important. What is also, from my experience, is important also to keep an eye on is to learn more about the legislations and the laws in the country where you are maybe operating, or whatever is going to be your next step. It's very crucial to learn about the laws and the legislations, because those will affect whatever will be your next step and your decisions to take sustainable, I would say, to take sustainable decisions. So this is also crucial. The other thing I believe Dr. Victoria mentioned is basically to be part of a network. So, and for the people who are listening to us today from UAE, you know, there are quite decent groups who discuss sustainability topics like the CSR Majlis. There are some of them based in Dubai and others are based in Abu Dhabi. So I encourage you, even as a student, is basically to be part and join those discussions. The other thing, the online system, like the lot of platforms, there is a lot of, I would say, webinars and I would say roundtable discussion around that. Be part of it. Don't wait till you graduate to take a part of that. So what I'm trying to say here, to be knowledgeable and up to date of all the sustainability topics and issues. So recently, for example, the UN has chosen this year to dedicate it for the Day for Clean Air. So there was a discussion between the EU group and also a UAE group. We're talking here about Secretary General representation from UAE. They were talking about also the Expo. They were talking about what's going to be after Expo. We were talking about also how we are going to convert UAE into more a sustainable, I would say, community, whether by creating sustainable transport to more pathways for cycling and for walking. So I think, to go back to your main question, what is the knowledge and skills? I think be part of the discussion. Don't side yourself and wait till you graduate, one. Two, what would be also good is if you can take, like anything else, have a mentor. See with whom you can connect with. Mentorship is really crucial to help you really understand and learn more on different levels. So I think this is what could really be crucial for our students, for the people who are listening to us today, is basically to be part of the discussion, to have a mentor who guides you and supports you through this journey, and don't wait till you graduate. Change starts from now. Start while you're still at university and learning about the different topics.
Fantastic. So thank you guys so much. I'd like to open it up for questions, but I just want to do a quick summary of some of the really poignant points and the points that I heard a couple of times. One of the things was that sustainability isn't just a fashionable thing. It's got to be something that we integrate into everything that we're doing. I think really importantly, that idea of breaking down the silos and working across interdisciplinary and those kinds of things is so valuable and is so important in higher education that I think that's a great takeaway. I think also that that idea of agency or having the authority or knowing how to do it, I think that's something that we should probably work to kind of suss out a little bit here at AUS and make sure that we feel that faculty feel empowered to try to bring sustainability into their classroom. Absolutely, the idea of time. How can we pile one more thing on the faculty to do and to change it? So I think that idea of going through the lens of sustainability is really a valuable thought on this, and not necessarily changing your whole class, but just using that sustainability lens is fantastic. And hands-on, experiential, having mentors, all of those things are so important for students. And for all the students on the call today, I think knowing that's so much easier to do, as Rania just said, when you're still a student than when you're out of school and you're no longer a student, trying to find that those mentors and things is not as easy. So I definitely encourage you to do that now. So I'd like to open it up for questions. We have about 5 minutes left. So Norita, can you help me? Have there been any questions in the chat? I do see one. How should I?
That's a few very interesting question, actually, Rose. A few of them actually want to come to the mic. Why do we do that? Well, can you promote, I guess, Saeed? And we have Sandra. She's already there. So Sandra, do you want to come to the mic, please?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon.
Hi. What's your question?
Hi. Thank you first for this exciting and rich discussion. Actually, I don't have a question. I would like to second the discussion that was given by Dr. Victoria, I guess, about the challenges that faculty face when they want to implement or teach sustainability. And this is based on my personal experience because I come from a traditional Lebanese/French K-12 system. Then I did my bachelor also in Lebanon, master's and PhD here in Dubai. And none of these I have ever been taught or was even slightly exposed to sustainability. So now I was just graduated my PhD 2 years ago. I'm teaching at the College of Education. And even in my teaching courses, I don't see anything that is connected to sustainability. So I'm not prepared. Not only that, I don't have the practice and I don't have the opportunity to be exposed or to expose my students because it's never there. And believe me, the first time I saw a student get involved or engaged in sustainability was my own daughter, who was in grade 8 last year, and she was doing a full essay about the SDG goals. Whereas I look at my students, they are undergrads, they are adults, they know nothing about SDG goals, nothing at all. And they, even in the way that the courses are structured or designed, there is no way, no opportunity for them to get involved in SDG goals. Plus, a second thing that Dr. Victoria also mentioned is the workload. While I would love to expose them, I would love to teach them and get them involved in this, but there is no time. And believe me, they are, I don't want to say lazy, but they are also overwhelmed with tasks that they don't want extra things that they don't would have grade on them, let's say, you know. So also thinking of the K-12 system, I'm teaching these students who come from a very traditional K-12 system here in the UAE. And similar case to me, these students are not exposed to the same way that my daughter is in an IB curriculum. So preparing students from school is a crucial factor. Also, redesigning the curriculum at the higher education level is something that is urgently needed. And exposing faculty, whether by giving them professional development programs or giving them additional courses, if they weren't taken these previously in their preparation program, is also a crucial factor to ensure sustainability. We are, as Dr. Camilo said, we are coming to an end of our species, and we don't want to do that. I want to see my children and their children and their children as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think that going, you know, you say being overwhelmed, I think maybe going, approaching it as that lens of instead of revamping all of the curriculum, trying to have them look at a project from the sustainability lens, so you're not changing everything. So yes, good luck, Sandra. Saeed, did you have a question?
Yes, do you hear me? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Issues with my video, but that's
no, that's fine.
You can hear me. My mom says I'm handsome anyway, so that's an issue. Really, thank you all. It's been stimulating and very much interesting. I think AUS is at the forefront. Rose and her team have been doing grand jobs, really, with
thank you
at AUS and around the region. Actually, AUS has gone outside the campus, you know, the walls of the campus, outside to the community. Now, really, I would like to start, you know, for example, my son, a teenager, went to Sri Lanka and Nepal for, I think, 2 weeks each time with his friends there. And they saw life there, you know, going from the luxury, you know, and we all enjoying the UAE, and they went there and they came back. They felt sorry for the whole place, etc., etc., etc. They worked on sustainability projects, etc. But then they come back. See, and this is the issue. What happens to the rest of the world? You know, the UAE, under the patronage of the late Sheikh Zayed, as Dr. Sonia said in her opening, you know, invested heavily. There is the money. You need to invest in order to have some kind of sustainability. You know, we need to have a sustained culture in order to achieve that. Camilo, for example, my colleague who teaches architecture, I'm sure he would agree with me that architecture cannot be taught, you know, outside the context of where it is done. You know, we cannot teach it, we cannot do it, you know, if we divorce it from the where and the when. And really, you know, Sharjah has got its own views of architecture. New York has its own different views of architecture, etc. So, you know, the values that underpin what we do are different from place to place, from time to time. You can graduate with a degree from X country in the States or Europe, like what we all have done. And then how we domesticate those views, how we domesticate those to fit that macro-cultural context of the area, the values, the religion, the history. You know, let me say, you know, we've been preaching democracy, human rights for 200 years maybe. And I think if we look at it, and just recent history last week, 2 weeks ago, there have been failures all the time. So sustainability may work. I think this is the issue, how to make it really work at the very micro level rather than importing and trying to domesticate global solutions. That is my problem, that I face with sustainability, with innovation, with entrepreneurship, how to bring whatever it is, the local, try to make it, the global, make it local. The people in Africa, the people my son saw in Sri Lanka and in Nepal, for example, they are going to decadence without an intervening period. They think it's their right of some kind of civilization, driving cars, as someone said, I saw in the chats, enjoying whatever we have enjoyed and the Western countries have enjoyed. So they are going from A to Z without that middle, the intervening period of some kind of enjoying life before you die. We are telling them, look, you've got to espouse, you've got to embrace sustainability models A, B, and C. But they say, look, you've enjoyed cars. I'm still pushing a mule around, for heaven's sake. I want to drive a car for a while.
So, Victoria, how do you address?
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
No, but sad. Pessimist, but there we go. I think Camilo is a pessimist with me as well for a while. Thank you very much indeed.
No worries. So, Victoria, going off of what Saeed said, how do you work with your faculty to localize the sustainability issues so it is more relevant and does have more actionable outcomes?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So there's kind of a concept that's becoming more popular, I guess, across the UK of anchor institutions and of universities as anchor institutions in their local community. And that's something that I think we are trying to embrace more and more. So I do quite a lot of work with our public engagement team, and it's about kind of transforming the idea of what a university should be, I think. So in our new sustainability strategy that was launched last year, we've got a target around increasing the footfall on our campuses by, I don't know, it's like 5,000 a year or something. But the idea with that is that we should be a kind of a hub for people. We should, community groups should be coming on to use our spaces. It should be a place that people feel they can come and use, and not to have the university as kind of this separate, isolated thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think often we are leaders, we're doing research, we're kind of, creating new knowledge and ideas. And I think that shouldn't be kept, separate from what's happening in the local spaces. And because we're based in Cambridge, it's kind of quite a unique situation because we have Cambridge University and then Anglia-Ruskin University. So I think we can actually, we fall into that role quite nicely because a lot of our students are local. So I think we have that kind of local connection already established, but there's so much more that we could be doing to not be seen as sort of an elitist institution and to really be part of the local community and to share that knowledge and understanding. So I think that's really important. And then kind of also what I sort of touched on it slightly with the cycling concept. So in Cambridge, cycling is just part of the local culture. Everyone cycles. And I think it's really important because it's part of this concept which is known as the subliminal curriculum. So it's sort of this idea that students will come to us to study, and they kind of, as well as taking in what we are teaching them, they're kind of also taking in everything that's around them, and that's the subliminal curriculum. And that's why I think actually the physical infrastructure that I mentioned earlier can be really important, because we need to be setting the example. We need to be showing them, like whether it's outstanding recycling facilities on campus that are also open for local people to come in and use as that kind of anchor institution approach. We can be setting leading the way essentially, and kind of showing what things could look like.
I think that's a great point to end on, that idea of not only breaking down silos between the departments on campus, but also to break down that cycle, that those silos of the university as kind of the ivory tower where they're not engaged with the community. So I think that's a great way to promote and to push us in the future. So thank you guys so much. I want to honor everyone's time. We're a couple minutes over, so I don't want to use up too much of your time. So thank you all for staying the extra 6 minutes. And thank you very much to the panelists for a very rich discussion on sustainability and how we can integrate it into the classroom. I look forward to following up on some of these ideas with Norita and seeing what we can do. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we have another day of webinars tomorrow. We have 2 more webinars with another panel on learning development, and our closing speaker, Alex Malouf from Schneider Electric, who will be talking from the industry perspective and what we need to see from graduates, or what they're looking to see from graduates in the sector of sustainability. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you all of your input and all of your enthusiasm for the topic. So have a good afternoon, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow at from 3 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need anything else, Norita? Is there anything else that we need to share before we jump off?
I guess we are good. I mean, there are a few questions that have yet to be answered, but we can definitely forward that to our panelists. And
absolutely.
Then, yeah,
we can definitely follow up on that. So sorry for those that we didn't get to, and thank you for your patience, and we'll follow back up with you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Rania. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.